You are listening to Withstood, produced by Crossbrand.
Okay, today, folks, on Withstood, y'all are going to be interested in what you're going to hear. We have a pastor that is divorced with a special needs child, and we have a new wife that is a drug addict. And let's see how God redeemed all of that. You're going to want to hear this episode of Withstood from Gregg and Casey Moore. Well, ladies and gentlemen, you have tuned into Withstood, a podcast from Crossbrand Cowboy Church outside of Tyler, Texas. I am just tickled to death to introduce Gregg and Casey Moore. Glad y'all are here.
Yeah. Glad to be here.
We're super excited.
Yeah, they're here for a weekend of training for the American Fellowship of Cowboy Churches, and man, I've got a lot of questions. Now, Gregg, how long have we known each other?
Well, Top End started in 2005, and that was way back in the TFCC days, and I was kind of a silent person back in those days, kind of focused on the church and everything.
Sure.
But started, y'all's church has been hosting things for a long time, and probably back then coming over here to Horse Gate and the different things that y'all put on.
Yeah. That was a few gray hairs ago.
It was. We both looked a little different. Yeah.
Or lost hairs. I'm not really sure. Hey, tell everybody where Top Hand is.
Sure. Top Hand is in Valley Mills, Texas. We're about 25 miles northwest of Waco on Highway 6.
Yes.
Everybody knows us where the great big arena is, because we have so many people that run Highway 6 back and forth, so we really are identifiable.
That's a pretty good landmark.
Yeah.
Yep. Tell me a little bit about, were you in church work prior?
Yeah, so I was a church secretary's kid.
Oh.
So I'm a Baptist boy from way back when, and so I was raised in the church, and I just knew that this is what the Lord wanted me to do. Although I had my Marine Corps stint and trying to figure out, but that was really when the Lord solidified what I was supposed to be doing, is when I was in the Marine Corps. And
how long did you serve?
Just under a year, and here's why. I tore all my ankles playing church basketball. I went to a fairly large church in San Antonio, and so we had our own church league and everything. So I tore up my ankles, and I told them before I went in, but I wanted to do embassy duty, so that means you're going to be a grunt.
Yeah.
But they also didn't tell me minimum height requirement is 6 foot.
Oh my!
I'm 5'8 3/4. So anyways, the Lord just knew I needed the discipline. It wasn't that I was wild or anything, but I did the college thing, the attempt before I went in the Marine Corps, and I was like, man, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to go be a welder. I'm going to do something else.
Yeah.
Way back when, back in Waco, helped to start a Cowboys for Christ gathering. This is back in the 80s, because I got out of the Corps in 88 and moved to Waco, and we didn't have anything like what we get to be a part of now. But I knew the Lord wanted me to do more. It was like, no, I want more from you. So went down the only road I knew to go, living in Waco, and went to Brownwood, went to Howard Payne University, and started working at Jordan Cattle Company, San Saba and Mason, and pastored Rochelle Baptist Church.
Absolutely.
And it just worked perfect for my school schedule. I could work one day in San Saba, Mondays in Mason, and still make it to class and still pastor the church. And I really thought that's where I probably could be there today, just living that kind of simple life. But the Lord had some different plans.
Much different
plans.
You ever think you'd be where you're at?
No. What I'm doing now is what I feel like God laid on my heart, even when I was in the youth group growing up. I've always loved the Lord, but I've always looked at ministry a little bit different than the traditional way of doing it, the way that I grew up. Because Mom being a church secretary, I saw the inside of ministry, and it's not always what people see on the outside.
Absolutely.
And so I kind of pushed back from that because I just knew that there had to be another way I could serve the Lord, and I couldn't imagine doing anything different now. You know.
And along comes Miss Casey.
Mm-hmm.
And life has not been the same since.
How long have you been married?
14 years this year.
Yep,
In
14 this
October,
year.
14 years. Yep.
Tell
Both
me
the
about
second
that.
marriage. Both the second marriage for both of us.
Second marriage for both.
Gregg went through a divorce as the pastor of Top Hand. So that was kind of rocked his world. Of course, I didn't know him at that time. I'm from Dallas. I'm a city girl. So I'm from Dallas, and he it was a tough time for him. He took some time off and came back, and when we got together, it was just really fast. I mean, we met in April, engaged in August, married in October. Like, we didn't waste any time. But, you know, when you're in your second marriage, you know, and you're not playing around. Like,
Well,
either you know or you don't.
We were both a lot younger then, too. I mean, 14 years ago, we were younger.
Sure.
But we both still had kids, and so there was this whole thought of we just knew. And and everybody that sees us together said, yeah, y'all knew. But there were some people that thought I was moving too fast.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
And it's just hard to put into words to say, guys, I know that God has told me that Casey and I are to be together, and he's got bigger plans than we even see right now.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably, it was fast. I will definitely say that. And I think because of the situation that surrounded their divorce, the church was really protective of Gregg. And so it was a little bit of a hard nut to crack for me, but I was determined. And my mom grabbed me by the shoulders the first time I was going to Top Hand, and she said, you be you. You know, you have the gift of winning over others. You do it, and you'll be fine. You know, and it may take a minute, and it did a little bit, but I mean, it was pretty quick. People.
Oh, yeah.
People, I love people.
Yeah.
You know,
yeah.
So.
Had you been in any ministry or?
I mean, I grew up in church, and my dad was deacon, my mom was Sunday school teacher, so I grew up in church, in a big church in Dallas.
Yeah, yeah.
So I've been around church my whole life, but never in a position like this. And you know, this is, even if you think you know, you don't know until you're in this position as a pastor's wife. What really goes on behind the scenes? So it has been. I mean, there's been some trying times at times, but we just continue to. We just continue to push through, but I tell you what, it was very, very hard in the beginning, I would say. Very hard. I felt pretty alone.
Oh, my goodness. I
Yeah.
can only imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Casey gets real close to people. She loves people deep, hard.
Yeah.
And we'd gotten close to some different couples in the church, and wake up one day and they kind of ghost us like they're gone and no explanation or anything. We didn't do anything. And I told Casey, I said, remember when your mom warned you about ministry? It's not what you think it is, and it's not what everybody sees it to be.
Absolutely.
And you know, it's not that I'm harder. She definitely has more empathy and compassion, probably 4 times as much as I do. But I just told her, I said, unfortunately, that's just part of ministry, and you can't chase everybody down for them to explain why they are acting the way that they are when you know that you didn't do anything to push them away. And that was, I think we had some long conversations about that, because that's happened 2 or 3 different times since we've been married. And you know, you've been in ministry. It's tough to get really close to people in your own congregation sometimes. But we have travel couples now that we've gone to Alaska with, and we do life
There's
together.
some that are definitely tried and true, you know, that are just those people for us. But it was hard for me because I'm a very social person, have a lot of friends. I have a lot of friends from high school and college and all that. And so leaving Dallas, I lived in a loft in downtown Dallas. I mean, I was around people all the time. Coming down, living in the country, I was like, oh my gosh. Like I couldn't even believe what I was doing here.
So we only lived when we lived in Crawford, outside of Crawford, when we got married, which is only about 15 miles outside of Waco. And to me, that was still living far enough out.
Oh, absolutely.
But if Casey forgot milk, she just thought, well, I'll just drive back into town and get milk. I said, no. We live in the country now. So you're going to town tomorrow, so we'll do without milk today.
But I had a grocery store on the downstairs floor of my loft, so I could get what I want when I want.
Yeah, a little different.
It was a little different, and it was just an adjustment for me. I mean, I remember Gregg, I was on the phone with one of my girlfriends one time, and I told her we lived off the grid.
No, you're going to
Gregg
laugh
was
at
like,
this.
he came in and he said, "Babe, we don't live off the grid." I said, "Yes, we do. We have a septic. We don't have regular plumbing."
That's
And he
how
was like,
downtown she is.
But I've learned a lot of
Oh,
things
yeah.
since being in the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have.
Well, tell me, the common theme on every one of our guests on Withstood is trouble.
Mm-hmm.
What? Tell us your stories. What has God blown you away about? And I understand, Casey, you have quite a story in that area. When did all that stuff happen to you?
Let's see, back up around 2000 or so is when I was in a marriage, and it was a rough marriage. We grew up the same, both grew up in church and all of that. He was a counselor and as well as a personal trainer. And I was working in fundraising at the time, and I had always been an athletic girl. So I was a little bit, at that point I had my son in college. So, I had gained some weight. And so we had a tough time. He was pretty hard on me in that way. And I just wanted so desperately to lose weight. And so back in 2000, it was actually probably like 99, but I knew a girl that was losing a bunch of weight, and I asked her about it, a girl that I worked with, and asked her about it. And she told me it was an illegal drug, but she said you can just do it and then get a jump start and then stop, just don't after that. Cause I've never really I didn't think an addictive personality at all. And, so as it turns out, it was not only just an illegal drug, it was a methamphetamine is what it was.
Oh my goodness. Casey.
So it took hold of me. I tried, I thought to myself, I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to stop in like 6 weeks. I'll have a jump start. I'll be motivated. I even asked my husband about it. He said, yes, go ahead and do it. He told me to do it. So not his fault. I made the choice, but we agreed on it. And sure.
Why did he agree to it?
He wanted me to be thin.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I think the ladies need to hear that.
Yeah. He wanted me to be thin. So, it just took over. It took everything. It was 8.5 years of meth addiction, to the point of just almost death, basically. I got to that point. I was very functioning for several years. I had big jobs. I had director of fundraising jobs. I had really great a career, and I was just very functioning. I would go during lunch and go on a break, and I would just go hide and do it. And it gives you a lot of energy. It makes you not hungry. It makes you have a lot of energy. I got a lot of work done. But eventually it catches up with you. And my husband at the time, it was probably about a year after I started using that he started. And he did not handle it. He immediately lost his job and everything. I kept going, and it was a real wreck. It just took me to the point of death, really. I was extremely, extremely ill. It took me places I never thought I'd ever go. I had such a good home, good parents. Wonderful parents, probably some of the my mom was hands down the strongest Christian woman I've ever known. Ever, would you say?
Oh, without a doubt.
So, and they just were on their face before the Lord every day praying for me. And
when did you know you really had a problem?
I knew I had a problem early on because I was hiding it. The timeline is so off. I don't remember everything, but I know that we had separated. I had my son Carson, who was born in 91 when I was in college, and his dad wasn't involved or anything like that. And so I had him, and I remember he was probably at this time, maybe 12, 13. And, I just let him do whatever he wanted to do because I needed him to be gone. And we lived in a good neighborhood. He just stayed out with friends, did stuff at a very young age, put himself in a lot of positions that were not good, which is unfortunate. And I still struggle with that sometimes that, my lack of parenting caused him a lot of harm. And, so in 2008, 2007, I thought I was at my rock bottom. I actually stole a bracelet from JCPenney's kind of funny story in a way. It's sad because I stole this bracelet. I got arrested because I had warrants for unpaid tickets, hot checks. I mean, I just had a list of things. But the bracelet had the Serenity Prayer on it.
Oh my goodness. Did you know it when you were stealing it?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
I read it and I wanted it. And it's just weird how that happened. But the interesting thing about my mom is later that night, she went back and bought the bracelet.
This is what's crazy, Mike. Yeah.
She went back and bought the bracelet, and then she held on to that for me for a long time and gave it to me after I was in recovery. And
did that
when I was in jail, that I thought that was it. I felt like I remember coming home and telling my parents, like, I feel like it was a battle for my soul, honestly. Like, I felt like Satan and God were battling for me. But it wasn't quite there yet. I had a little bit more. This was in October of 2007, and I got clean in January of 2008, only because I was just deathly ill. I mean, Carson ended up talking to my parents, and he covered for me all the time. He didn't know. I didn't know he knew. I thought I was fooling him, and but he thought I was dying. So that, and he was 16 at the time. I was an addict between the ages of 8 and 16 for Carson. So it was a really tough time. But I believe that God just struck me down with illness. I had a major blood infection. I had, I can't even tell you how many abscessed teeth. I had pneumonia because I smoked meth is what I did. And I had pneumonia. My lungs were shot. I was at death's door for sure. And I feel like that's what God just like struck me down with illness. Because then next thing you know, I wake up and I'm like 2 weeks clean. I hadn't used in 2 weeks. I'm like, what's the date? My mom tells me what the date is. I'm like, I look at my phone, try to see what I can figure out. And yeah, that was, I couldn't believe it. I thought I would never go one day. And then it was just like, I had just like this tiny little bit of courage and just strength to go, I need help. Help me, and I actually just cried out to God right there. God help me is what I said. And that's when everything started rolling. The journey began.
And what was that? What was that journey like?
Well, that journey was interesting. It was very hard at first. So meth is not a drug that you have major withdrawals like a heroin or opioid or even alcohol. But it's not a physical withdrawal. It's more of a mental withdrawal. Okay. Like if I would wake up in the night, I would always use, that I would just wake up, and if I woke up in the night, I would just get it. I would use. So getting my sleep patterns in order took about 6 months. I was up and down, and it was very maddening, for me. And I started going to NA and AA. That my parents had some good advice. They said they moved us in. We were being evicted from our apartment. They moved us in with them, me and Carson. At this time, my husband and I had already split up, but they moved us in, and they said, this is your one chance. You have one single chance.
Tough love. Yeah.
They said, we can drug test you whenever we want. If you decline a test, you're out. If you test positive for anything, you're out. This is it. This is the one chance you have. And so I did it. And the advice that the people gave them were like, let AA and NA be her job. Don't send her to work at this point. Just support her. Luckily, my parents were able to do that. And I went to meetings 2, sometimes 3 times a day for months.
Thank God for your
parents. Yeah. And my parents, for 90 days, they didn't even let me drive to the meeting. They took and they waited outside for me. And I was 38 years old, and they waited outside for me.
Lots of accountability.
Yeah, lots. But I never relapsed. And that's like unheard of with meth addiction.
It is, absolutely. And I'm speaking from family experience.
Yeah, it's been years since I've looked at the stats. Probably like maybe 5 years ago I looked at it, but it was like 89% of everybody who ever uses meth will never stop. 89%. And of that 11% that does stop, 9% relapse over and over again before they finally get it. So there's only 2% that actually stop.
And but that's even in the 80s when it was first coming out, my brother was in several different institutions and rehabs, and they told us at one of the top ones in Dallas, there's only a 2% chance that he won't relapse.
Yeah, that's the exact stats that I know.
And so you're going to all these meetings.
Going to church. I'd been to the church I'd been to my whole life. And somehow I wound up in a women's Sunday school class. Everybody was at least 10 to 15 years older than me. But it was the perfect place for me. They were very nurturing. I didn't tell them in the beginning what was going on, but not long after being in there, I had them all over to my parents' house and I told them everything. And it was like some of the ladies in that class were my mom's age. You know, they were several years, 25, 30 years older. But it was a very nurturing place for me to be. I threw everything into recovery. I believe in what the 12 steps have to offer. I think it's a way of living. And without God, without my parents, I had a drive. Number one, I was in such pain over what I'd done to my son. And my parents at the time that I was still using, they at that point were going to take Carson from me legally. So there's all kinds of things happen. It's like a perfect storm. And I just began to go to meetings, work the steps, sponsor people. I mean, I just stayed in it. And by the time Gregg and I met, I had 3 years clean. So it was a pretty interesting conversation that first time I told him.
Oh my goodness. Let me tell you about our first conversation. So I had been divorced, but I'm taking care of Stephen full time.
How long have you been divorced?
A year, maybe?
Yeah.
A year?
Yeah. About a year. But I was caring for Stephen full time. I stepped away from the church. Thankfully, I had a full-time pastor that could take over, and the right elders were there at the right time.
Amen.
And so I stepped away. I came back, but I'm not built for being alone, although I like my alone time, but I wasn't going to be healthy by myself.
I get it.
And so we joke about this.
Let me tell this part.
This is a plus for Christian Mingle.
So this right when Christian Mingle came out was like a online dating thing.
Yes.
All my friends up in Dallas did Match and eHarmony, but I was always afraid to do all that kind of stuff. And I mean, where am I going to meet someone? I've been in the same church my whole life. I'm not going to bars. I'm not doing, so my friend was like, look, it's brand new. It's a free weekend. You don't even have to pay for it. Just see what's out there. And he signed up for the same free weekend.
Wow.
But we've been paying for it ever since.
We have 100% in the best way.
In the best way. Yeah. So I really, I thought I had the world by the tail going before the divorce. I mean, I was doing tailgate preacher. Church was doing good. I felt like I was right where I needed to be. So our story of how I got where I got just started splitting our walks after Stephen was born. Today is actually his 28th birthday.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And so that's special because I posted today that I remember praying, Lord, 28 days, and now we're at 28 years. Yeah. But his brother passed in the womb. So we delivered twins 10 weeks early at 30 weeks. And that was the day my life forever changed. My prayer life changed. Everything changed. And
that was
in 97.
Okay.
March 7th, 1997. Had a 3.5-year-old son, older. I called every pastor, every seminary. I called everybody. How do I tell our 3.5-year-old that one of his brothers is gone, the other's in critical condition, and every night before we went to bed, we sang, "Count your many blessings, name them one by one." And there was not a soul that could give me an answer on how to talk to Jonathan about what had happened. And it was a crazy, how it happened was crazy. So they delivered the 2 babies. They knocked her out. They'd already called cooks in Fort Worth to come get Stephen, but they wanted me to go. So Stephen and I left, and she was
Before she woke up.
So she wakes up by herself. Her son that is barely hanging on to life is not in the same hospital.
Oh.
She realizes that Philip has passed.
And you're gone.
My parents were able to be there immediately, but I'm up at Cook's Hospital by myself 28 years ago today. Matter of fact, it's 1:30, and I think we got there at 3 o'clock, and it was a shift change. So I still went for another 2 hours before I ever knew whether Stephen was going to pull through or not. So from that moment, the doctor, after a couple of days, she's able to come up, and they sit down with us, and they said he's had brain bleeds, and we just can't tell you right now what kind of condition he's going to be in. So he went home on a monitor. We were in NICU for 6 weeks. We're able to come home. The crazy part about this is this happened on a Thursday. The very next Sunday was going to be my first Sunday at First Baptist Church McGregor, the very first Sunday. Wow. We'd already moved everything into, quote unquote, the parsonage. So I couldn't even express how upside down our life got within a 24-hour period. And so through that process, we went to grief counseling. We did marriage counseling several times. We just never could. And it was frustrating because here I'm in the ministry, supposed to be helping people, and yet we couldn't seem to pull ourselves together as a family. She completely threw herself into caring for Stephen, and she worked a full-time job. So thankfully in the ministry, I was able to help get Stephen on the bus to go to school, and I was there when he got home. But then as soon as she got home from work, I had to go do ministry. And so our lives just completely drifted until Christmas of 2010. Everything fell apart, and the divorce took place. And so I just thought that was the end. I didn't know you could survive a divorce and still be at the same church. Totally unheard of. You think of all the ministers you know and how that goes. You usually don't get to stay at the same ministry, even if you get to stay in ministry.
Pastors for that.
Right. And so I just said, Lord, I know what you called me to do, and I don't understand. I just don't understand how my life got to this point. And there were 3 weeks that were pretty dark. Like if it had been Jonathan's senior year, I would have run. I just would have said, I can't do this. Yes. And so Casey comes along, and we met on that free weekend, and our first conversation was...
And how long had you been divorced? Tell me that again.
At that point...
Almost a year, maybe?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So at that point, we kind of get on the phone. You know, you did this texting thing. I don't remember that part as much as our first phone conversation. And I said, okay, well, I need to tell you something. And, you know, you just need to know this up front because this may be a deal breaker. I said, I'm a full-time pastor, and I've got full-time care of a special needs son. And if that's a deal breaker, let's just know that right now. She said, okay.
I said, well, while we're being honest, I have 3 years clean from meth addiction.
I said, okay, you win.
Yeah.
I think you one-upped him.
I did.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Well, but we both brought things in that were going to be big in our lives.
Oh, yeah.
My goodness.
And even 3 years, I mean, meth addiction is rough. I mean, there's times even in my life now, I don't ever crave it anymore. I have no desire to use, but something will pop up or I'll smell something or something and it'll bring it all back. And
little trigger.
Yeah, little triggers. And, you know, thank goodness that God has taken away any desire that I've ever had for that. And and so we agreed that we both had big things, but we also knew very, very soon that this was something different.
Right. And it had radically changed my ministry. Like, I thought I understood divorce. I thought I helped families going through divorce.
Yeah.
I had no clue until I went through a divorce.
Do you now?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's such a different way. My whole ministry has changed, really. You know, I didn't know anything about addiction. Nobody in my family drank. I didn't know. I had some friends in high school that did drugs, and 2 of them died. And so I was like, well, don't need to ever do that.
We had a long conversation one night, and he was like, I need to ask you a question. Like, if it's killing you, why don't you just stop? Like, what causes
That was my
you?
understanding of addiction. Quit sticking your finger in the socket, and it won't hurt. It will go away. And I was being honest.
Yeah.
I didn't have an understanding of, and Casey said, Gregg, either this is a blessing or a curse.
Yeah.
But you do not have an addictive personality. You are able to stop something if you make your mind up. Drugs are different. So she took me to a couple of meetings, and I'd never been to an AA meeting or an NA meeting. And I was like, whoa,
It doesn't. Did you notice real quick that it doesn't discriminate?
Oh, no, it doesn't at all. And she took me to some meetings where there were people like that week that was their first
Had
meeting.
24 hours. Or
24 hours. And then I learned all about coins and stuff like that. But now through ministry, I mean, there's so often that people will call Casey, and maybe it's the parents of an adult child that's struggling, or maybe it's that individual that's struggling. And I was like, there's nowhere to prepare, the book that says all the things you didn't learn in seminary. Well, I mean, this is huge, because I was like, how do I minister to these people when I don't even have a true grip or understanding of it? And so by God bringing the two of us together, it has just opened up the floodgate doors for us to be able to minister. Again, there's not a lot of pastors that survive a divorce, let alone our church grew abundantly since then. And Casey gets a lot of the credit for that. She is a huge blessing in our church.
The gift of woo, remember?
I
She does.
need to remember that.
Yeah, she has that. But he's just opened up so many doors for us just to love on people. And I really have a different understanding of meeting people where they are.
Mm-hmm. What is it? Empathy is created in part by experience.
Yes.
And so, when Paul was talking to the Corinthian church, and he says, guys, y'all need to share the same comfort that you were comforted with.
Yes.
Your story is really so people underrate their stories. Ministry is so much, whether it's lay ministry, life ministry, or full-time ministry, it is about your story.
Right. Tell your story.
Tell your story.
And that has been our key.
That's been something we've just embraced, because
I'm glad.
And we pushed that on the church. I mean, if you come to our church, you can ask anybody. They're going to say, yeah, Gregg says, tell your story all the time. Because it's your story. You can't get it wrong. It's your story. I can't walk up to somebody and say, well, that's not accurate. I didn't live that.
That's right.
So just tell your story of who you were before you found Jesus, how you found Jesus, and now share what you're doing with Jesus and how you're walking.
And I want to add that I was a believer before I was a drug addict. So
Satan doesn't discriminate, though.
he does not. The foothold he had on me since I was a little girl was my self-image. And I was very, very, I had the worst, negative, not just negative self-talk, just like almost like self-hate. And I remember my mom would talk to me, like put me in the mirror and like, what do you see? What do you see that's so awful, Casey? Like, I see beauty. I see this. She was trying and I just never could see it. And so I was a believer, but I was so desperate for something different. And Satan just continued to just pull and pull and pull me until I was like, okay, this can work. But, after getting clean, and I was probably, maybe a few weeks clean. So I was sleeping a whole lot. I was upstairs in the upstairs bedroom, and I would wake up and my mom would just she would just be praying, have her hand on my foot or something like that. And, and she would come in and rub my hair, she was very, very caring, very, very compassionate, because she had been begging God for my life.
Good mama.
She told me, she said, I can't tell you how many times I was flat face down on the floor, just before the Lord, just saying, please, So she told me about 3 weeks out of, or in recovery, she said, I'm going to tell you something, and you won't really understand it as much right now, but you will as you go. But right now, all that you feel, because I was miserable right then. Everything was wrong. I had so much shame and just my life. Everything. And she said, this suffering you feel right now, don't let this go to waste. Use this to show people where hope is. And so don't let your suffering go to waste is like my
hashtag.
It's everything to me, because she's like, why would you have a story that you don't want to tell people? Because you know where hope is found. And why would you keep that a secret?
That's right. Boy.
Yeah.
It'll preach, Greg.
It's powerful. Oh, it is. Yeah, it's powerful.
Yeah, she had some insight, and she never experienced addiction either. She wrote in her her Bible in Vacation Bible School in the 5th grade, I will never drink alcohol. And she never did, ever, ever. Yeah. And me, what I did decide after I got clean, I also don't drink alcohol. I think it's a slippery slope for me. Sure. I mean, if other people can do it, that's fine. But for me, I've just made a decision that I don't do it. And I think for me, that's the best thing I can do. God's given me so much back. More like I feel like my life is greater than it ever was even before because of the confidence I have in Him. In number one, just beating this addiction with Christ. And I was such a, it's hard for Gregg to understand this, but I was like so weak and such a, like, almost like a doormat, like very demure, very like beaten down in a way. And I mean that he's like, I don't see that.
She's
I can't
the
see that.
polar opposite now. It's just really hard for me to imagine. Again, I've learned a lot about addiction and we've talked more about where she was in life, but to see her now, she is one of the most confident women that I know. And I don't say that because she's my wife. I say that because her confidence is in Christ first. And so it's just hard for me to see where she's at now and imagine where she felt she was before. And it's
hard for people to see. They're like, I just can't see that. And I'm like, yeah, because that's the restoration of Christ.
Right.
That's why you can't see it.
Well, and self-esteem and self-esteem and self-worth only come after we embrace our worth with Christ.
Yes.
And so you didn't have that that strength going into the addiction.
Yep. No, I did not.
No ground there to grab onto.
No.
Well, guys, we're going to wrap up this deal, but I always ask people for parting shots. And Gregg, you can speak to the pastors or you can speak to anybody else and give us one or two nuggets from y'all's Rex.
Yeah, so you're never too far, whether you're in ministry or not, that God can't pull you back.
And use you.
And I've been amazed at how I thought God was using me. I thought I was in the right place before, but my entire ministry is so different. He's allowed us now to have a podcast. We've got a website where we go to churches and speak at Valentine's banquets and all kinds of other events. And we're just telling our story of God's grace. Our podcast is Grace for Days. And so Grace for Days really means that God's grace is there. Any day you want to reach out and grab it, it's there.
There you go. Amen. That's right. Casey?
I would just say to women out there that do struggle, there's a lot of women that struggle with self-esteem and self-image, and you hit the nail on the head. You know, where are you placing your worth? And until you get to the point of where your worth is in Christ, you will battle that. Now, it rears its ugly head sometimes, even now, but I know what to do when it does. You know, I call out to the Lord, Satan flees, and I take a step forward.
You got it.
Yeah, and so I know how to do it. But I would just say, start looking at what is your worth in Christ. He made you. So where is it there? And, you know, and that's kind of my thing too, is like, it is never too late.
Right.
Yeah.
It is never too late. Well, guys, I know we don't have video on this, but it is sitting across from this couple. I feel like I need to go take a bath or something because they just keep goo-goo-eyeing one another. And if you don't know what goo-goo eyes are, you're not from Texas.
We're in love.
I can tell. That's what I always tell Honey, my wife, you know, we are not only in love, we are in like.
Oh, yeah.
Jesus makes us love one another, but we choose to just enjoy one another's company. And I can see it.
Yeah.
First time I met Casey, I knew it. I have been warned throughout the AFCC that crazy has a new definition, and its name is Casey. just a little bit.
Maybe
That's
a little.
true.
Maybe a little.
I was warned actually before you came in here by somebody whose initials are Jeff Bishop that we needed to move all the expensive equipment away.
So silly.
So
silly.
I kept wondering why he was. I thought he was asking for AFCC purposes what this mic cost, what's that board cost. It was because of Casey.
In case it had to be replaced.
Yeah.
And look at me sitting here so
I know,
pretty.
You've done so good. You've done so good. Guys, thank you. You are my friends.
Yes.
Thank you.
You are friends of the American Fellowship of Cowboy Churches, but most importantly, you have, and I just got to say this, you guys ain't about a brand. You're not about just your church only. You are about the kingdom.
That's right.
And so having said that, guys, give us one more shout out to the way people can get in touch with y'all.
The best way is we do have a website that's just greggandcasey.com. Okay. And it has all of our podcasts, has our information, has our stories, have contact forms, easy to get to us.
Okay.
Yep.
That's the easiest
way.
way.
It's the easiest way, really.
All right. Thank y'all so much for stopping in.
Yes, thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, this has been Withstood with Casey and Gregg Moore. God bless you.